I finally solved my Fuji lens drama and celebrated with a couple of shoots. I shot my first music video with Joan Avant. The link's in the description. So yeah, I finally figured it out. I sold my Fuji GF 63 2.8 after it came back from repair, and instead of selling off everything, I got the 32 to 64 as I mentioned last week. It came in, and I decided to test drive it with a couple of shoots. The first one was with Brittany at my familiar stomping grounds of Alex and Afton Vintage in Tyler, Texas. Alex and Afton's always a great place for photos, and the co-owner Caitlin is always awesome for styling people and shoots and everything. Brittany started off in these bell bottoms and this kind of 60s vibe, and it was great. And I got to experiment with a wide-angle lens for the first time, like the super wide angle, which is the 24mm type range on 35mm. I got to experiment with it for the first time, since I can't remember. I've shoot the range on reportage and stuff, but I don't really use those cameras for portrait work much anymore. And so my medium format work has never had a view this wide, at least in the digital realm. So it's a lot of fun to be able to do like that shot on the steps. You can just see her head to toe and you can tell it's closer and take advantage of wide angle things. It seems like a lot of lenses look great when you combine them with flash, and it probably has something to do with shooting at smaller stops or something like that, as in the smaller aperture, which generally creates a slightly sharper image than shooting wide open. I decided to shoot everything I could natural light. I just want to see how the light bounces around inside the glass. I have this thing, it's not scientific, but I feel like a lot of people know what I mean, is I had this test where I point the lens into the sun, basically, which is so much easier on mirrorless cameras, I might add, because I feel like I've burned holes in my eyes shooting through SLRs into the sun. You gotta also be careful not to burn a hole in your sensor. Anyway, that doesn't happen, much at all that I know of, as long as you're smart with it. I like to see flaring characteristics. Flare is okay in my book, but you want to understand how it flares, because there are different levels of flare. And this magical thing happens with certain lenses, and I guess it's coatings or something, but it feels like this happened to me with the Canon 100 f2 USM. It does this thing where the sun hits it and it just turns everything into gold. It transfers light or color throughout the lens in a certain way, and this happened with certain other lenses but not others. Some will have kind of a cold, non-warm rendering. And this Fuji lens I've only shot into the sun a couple of times. It's on the cooler side. It doesn't render too warm, but it does have a pleasant haze about it, and the sharpness is possibly too sharp. There's a shot where her leg is, Brittany's leg is against a soft backdrop, and there's just the line of her leg looks artificial. It's so sharp. That's fine with me though, because I like to diffuse my photos a lot. Speaking of, I didn't diffuse these photos on the camera this time. I want to see how the lens is by itself and to get a real feel for its qualities before I start mucking about and putting filters on it. I'm not going to do MTF charts or anything, but I will do the pointed at the sun test and can it focus when you point it at the sun, does their face disappear when you point it at the sun type test, and I'm happy to report that it resists destructive flaring too much, and it's neutral but not ugly. When you point it, the color rendition, I haven't pointed like a really beautiful sunset into it. I've only done 2 shoots. So the jury's still kind of out on that. This is first impressions. So first impression is that it is sharp as razors, and it does pretty nice with flare resistance, but allowing in a nice softness when you point it toward the sun. One of the big negatives I read about this lens in reviews was people talked about its close focusing abilities. And that was one of the major factors that put me off of it versus the 63 prime, is that it can shoot really close up, and that was a really nice thing because I really like getting in close. So I made sure to test this thing as much as I could. I would zoom in and see how close I could get it, and I've got to say, it doesn't bother me a lot. The close focusing is not as close as the 63mm, but it does the job for the most part. I want for a 110 or something, or 85 equivalent now, but I really should have done that with the 63mm anyway, because it's basically a 50mm equivalent, which means that if you notice, if you use a 50mm lens enough on even 35mm cameras, you start suffering distortion if you get within a certain range. 50mm is known as kind of the standard lens, but it is a slightly more distorted lens than you would see in a telephoto lens. And there's a lot of science here, but as far as the operating experience goes, it will create distortion if you get too close. And this distortion isn't severe like a fisheye, but it is enough where there are certain faces that look really great with the distortion and certain faces that don't, and of course objects and things. Speaking of distortion, that's pretty nice. There's not a lot of perceptible distortion to me for this. I'm sure architecture and landscape people will notice more, but I was pretty fine with it. And speaking of other imperfections, chromatic aberration, I managed one hint of it with an extreme black against an extreme blown out sky. There's not going to be much of that. It doesn't bother me a lot because computers are really great at correcting for it. And this is about the most technical review I'll ever do. I don't point things at walls to see patterns. I don't measure anything much. I like to review from the experience of just using something and what does it mean, you know, when you use it, and how does it get in the way or not get in the way. And on that, this lens does not get in the way. I was worried about its size and weight, and neither have bothered me very much. The 77mm filter size is slightly more inconvenient than the 62mm from the 63mm. I'm throwing out all kinds of numbers. It's not too bad, and the nice thing is I can probably shoot a uniform set of filters now instead of having all kinds of random adapters that never seem to add up to the right combination. So I'm looking forward to that. The autofocus, it feels a little zippier than the 63mm. I was very pleased for that. I'm enjoying overall the whole range of things I have access to now. The very wide angle, like the 24mm zone, up to that 50mm that I was worried about losing. So props to all the people who told me to stick it out and try the kit lens. And speaking of it, it really is kind of the kit lens of the GFX series. I would deem this lens the ruler of kit lenses. Join Michelle Singletary, Stephanie K. Smith, Sarah, Hugo Hernandez, Ronnie Pittman, and May as patrons. My Patreon contributes just a small amount of cash right now, but it's a huge help considering that this is a nights and weekend passion project. So your contributions matter a lot to me, and I appreciate my patrons. And this was just earlier, a few hours ago, but I wanted to share this other shoot I did with this lens, and I got a little more sunset-ish action with it. Got to see how it behaves with water, and I actually got to use my polarizer with it a little bit, which I'm not going to be able to show you. These are just some quick edits that I did with Savannah in a pool locally. And it was a lot of fun. Like I said, this is just a quick glimpse. I thought I would share it because it's relevant to the topic of this informal lens review. So hope you enjoy these pictures, and I'll try to maybe cover the shoot a little bit more next episode. I'll see what comes up during the week. I've got some other shoots planned. So I hope that was helpful. If you like these kind of different reviews and behind the scenes looks, definitely feel free to subscribe. I have gone over 525 subscriptions and it's super cool. I think I might start a giveaway for my 750th subscription. Is it too soon? What do you think about that? Because I was thinking of maybe giving away a little photography gift or something in the $25 to $50 range. So if you would be interested in that, and I also wouldn't just do it for people who subscribe new or anything. It'll be something where you enter, and then when I hit 750, I'll try to do a drawing or something. I don't want it to be like getting 1 million spam followers or anything. I just want to kind of pay you back for, I try to give you value, but I want to pay you back too for your viewership and support, and I appreciate it. So I'll be back around next week, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and bye.